Alright, let's set the stage. It's 1779 and the American Revolutionary War is going full throttle. Now, while the Continental Army is freezing in the winter and squaring off with redcoats on land, there's a whole other scene playing out on the high seas that's like an 18th century pirate movie, but with a ton more improvisation and a lot fewer parrots. Enter the American privateers. Basically, freelancers who turned up with their own ships, ready to take on the British Navy with nothing but a signed permission to cause trouble, slip from Congress, and whatever cannons they could scrounge up. This is the wild world of privateering. Now, these privateers weren't exactly the Navy. They were fishermen, merchants, and even the odd guy looking for a little revenge against Britain for good measure. And Congress, desperate for any help they could get in harassing Britain, was just handing out privateering licenses like Halloween candy. The idea was simple. Go mess with British supply ships, make them miserable, and hey, if you get any loot along the way, it's yours. This was Revolutionary War meets lottery prize. American privateers had free reign to capture any British ship they could get their hand on, and anything on board. Fair game. From tea and textiles to wine and weaponry, whatever the British were shipping, the Americans were taking. One prime example, John Paul Jones. This guy was practically the poster boy for patriotic sea roguery. Sailing the Ranger and later the infamous Bonhomme Richard, Jones would sneak up on British ships and throw the sea equivalent of an uninvited block party. He'd announce his presence with cannon fire and then board the ships like, surprise, it's America! During one famous fight with the Serapis, after his ship took some serious hits, Jones was reportedly asked if he wanted to surrender. And what did he say? I have not yet begun to fight, which roughly translated was 1779 slang for, bring it on, mate. But this wasn't a one-man show. Throughout 1779, privateers were capturing British ships left and right, clogging up British courts with so many seized vessels, they didn't know what to do with them. Picture this, British ports getting calls left and right from captains saying, yeah, we lost another one. The British merchants are fuming, the Navy is scrambling, and British Parliament is sitting there going, how do these amateurs keep winning? Britain was supposed to have the strongest Navy in the world, but these privateers were making them look like they'd forgotten how to sail. And let's talk tactics, because these privateers weren't exactly following the Queen's rules. They'd run up fake flags, pull sneaky night attacks, and they even had a few custom ships built for speed over firepower so they could do quick hit and runs. They were the original blink and you'll miss it squad. Now British captains would sometimes see a lone, smaller ship and think, oh, easy win. But nope, it'd be a trap. The American privateer would close in, they'd fire board, and pretty soon, that British ship was sporting a new American flag. Then there was the loot. Anything the British were shipping was fair game. Now some of these British ships weren't just carrying cannonballs and gunpowder. Oh no. Imagine a group of ragged American privateers opening up a crate, expecting rations, and instead finding barrels of fine wine or stacks of luxurious British textiles. This was literal treasure for these men, who were probably living off hardtack and rainwater most days. It's said that some privateers even started dressing a little flashier, decked out in British silks and strutting around New England port towns like they were at a 1779 fashion show. Of course, all of this chaos came with risks. British ships started taking their own precautions. British captains were told to travel in convoys, like a seafaring buddy system, and they were armed to the teeth just in case some American privateer got any ideas. But here's the kicker. The British were pouring resources into protecting their trade routes, straining their supply lines, and diverting warships that could have been used in battles. The Americans didn't need to defeat the entire British Navy. They just needed to harass it, and it was working. Every British ship captured was a dent in the British economy and a morale boost for the American cause. By the end of 1779, American privateers had captured hundreds of British ships and millions of pounds in cargo. The privateers became something of folk heroes, with stories of their antics spreading through the colonies. They were loved in New England, where their loot would get sold off at auctions. Even folks who weren't exactly thrilled with the idea of war could get behind some guy in a fancy coat, auctioning off barrels of fine English tea at a steep discount. Privateering had turned war into an entrepreneurial opportunity.